You can't really prepare anybody to, show up on the scene of a fire and a family has lost everything or somebody and you're just there to cover it.
Welcome to another episode of Chewing the Fat. I am your host, Big Rob. Thank you so much for tuning in, following, downloading the podcast. I certainly do appreciate that. Thank you to all the folks that have sent me messages through the website at chewingthefatpr.com and also the folks who have bought me a coffee. I always appreciate your financial support for the podcast as well. It helps keep all the lights on and all the kooky colors on the audio board lit up for the podcast. So I appreciate you for that. I'm excited about my guest we've got in studio today. He's an improv actor. He is your man on the street. He is a reporter, and he is an amazing human being. Please welcome Brandon Dawson.
Ooh, yeah, happy to be here. Wow. I didn't expect the fans to be here.
Who let him in? It's such a small room. It's amazing that they got here. Brandon, thank you so much for being here, man.
Happy to be here, sir. Happy to be here.
I listed off a lot of things that that I know you from. I think my first introduction to you was probably through improv, Le Chat Noir, Schrodinger's Cat. Yes. Are you from Augusta?
No. I've actually was born and raised in Syracuse, New York.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yes, the high north. And if you don't know, people who don't know Syracuse is pretty much Canada. When we first moved to Georgia, which was I was probably about 13 years old, I had a very, very thick what sounded like a mixture between a Canadian sounding and a very northern accent. So that was my thing. That's where I'm from. And then we lived in Athens. Went from Athens, Georgia, and that's where we lived most of our lives. And then I decided to come to Augusta for college.
Okay. As opposed to staying in Athens for college.
Yeah.
There are no good schools there. So.
Not at all. UGA didn't want nothing to do with me.
So, as what you're doing now, you are a broadcaster. You are a journalist. I don't know. Do they call them multimedia journalists now, or do they call it? Used to be you called a one-man band back in my day.
Yeah, I am a one-man band, and my title actually is WJBF. I'm WJBF's first digital reporter. Yes, which granted, you do see a lot of people, see my stuff on TV all the time, but my primary focus is the web. So what I do is I do more. I kind of have a little bit more. And if you keep up with any of my stuff, I have a little bit more leeway than some of the other reporters. I get to really focus on local. Positive and really kind of hometown stuff. That's really what I focus on. And yeah, a lot of my stuff, yes, does end up on on broadcast. But then I also do a lot of web stuff as well. If you've noticed, I've been doing a lot more lists lately. Of that. I do a lot of things. Reach out to the community and ask them, what things they're into or what things are popular right then. And then I try to do that to really. Most of the time I'm just doing it to kind of shed light on businesses or people or, I did a list recently, it was, number one places to, take your dog to a restaurant, which, that actually did really well online because a lot of people, you get up on a Saturday afternoon and you're like, no, I want to go to breakfast and take my dog somewhere.
No, that's awesome. I mean, so it's kind of very... I don't know. I don't mean this in any disparaging way, but very kind of BuzzFeedy, very easily consumable, but very I love the hyper localness of it. That it's places here. It's not we got to travel 2 hours to get to. I think that's awesome.
Yes, and so doing stuff like that, but then also doing stuff I think I did aside from Dave and Buster's. I did that recently. That was a big one. We did Six Flags. That was another big one. But then I get to do some of the coolest stories out there, because I have time to really go do it. I did a story that did well on broadcast and on the web. It was about a farmer who he had a pair of kissing sweet potato sweethearts.
Oh.
A pair of sweet potatoes to him that he he said that it looked like they were kissing, and it was just an interesting thing to talk to him about.
Yeah.
But it was really cool. So I get to do a bunch of really cool stuff.
That's you're almost like the Bruce Almighty of Augusta.
That is what my mom says.
That's I don't mean that in a disparaging way.
I don't think it is. No,
okay, great.
In my opinion, I got the coolest job in the business right now in this area. I thank WJBF, for giving me a lot of leeway with stuff. I really do get to, choose what stories I want to do, choose what articles I want to do. I have to get everything okayed, but, most of the things that I want to do, they're very supportive about. They're very, as far as the community, they're very supportive about, lifting up locals as well. So, they have been very great about kind of letting me do my thing. And, even as far out, aside from Augusta, getting to go out and really highlight places like Swainsboro, McCormick, these places that are kind of in our area that don't they don't get highlighted as much, but now I get to go out and do to either whether it's I'm talking to their people or talking about an event. It's really cool to get to go out and see everybody like that.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I mean you're working at Channel 6 at WJBF with one of the. It's a great team there, but when you talk about these type of stories, of course, I have to think of George Escala and Out There Somewhere. That's got to have been some groundwork laid for that type of reporting. Of course, George, excellent reporter, and he does a lot of other political reporting and things like that as well. But I always look forward to his Out There Somewhere reports. So I think it's kind of cool that now there's two of you. There's and you get to expand on it a little bit more. You have a little bit more leeway and a little bit more freedom to expand on those type of stories. I think it's great.
I definitely picked George Escala's brain a lot when I was first starting because he definitely had me and him. We have kind of a similar vibe to each other. We actually sat behind each other for the longest time. Like we sat back to back. I just turned back to him and I'd be like, George, I'm doing this story, and how do you think I should approach it? And he'd always give me his honest opinion about it. He's a well of knowledge, that guy, and he's hilarious too.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. So was journalism always in the picture for you? I mean, did you go to school for that? When you came to Augusta for school, what did you come to school for?
So I'm not gonna lie. Did not think that this is where we would be. I'm a non-traditional student. I when I got done with high school, I wasn't really in a rush to get to college. Like, I did a lot of traveling. I worked at Blockbuster for 8 years.
Oh, wow.
8 years. I did. I was fine with that, actually. I was making decent money. And then, as Blockbuster kind of was starting to wrap up, it's 8 years, he's kind of getting old. I was really into cameras and stuff like that. And, I was doing freelance work for different people. And I would try to get, as I started to get tired of freelancing too, which freelancing is fine, and props to anybody who does it and is very successful at it. It's not particularly for me. I like to have, I have to know that money's coming in. And I had a couple of instances, whether it be, someone stiffing me for money or taking too long with money, and I was like, I can't have this again. So I was like, I wanted to get regular work. And it was tough getting the type of work that I wanted to because I didn't have a college degree, especially, I was in Atlanta at the time. So, you're trying to go to all these big places and, they're like, well, you don't have a degree in anything. So, and I wasn't really the best at like keeping up with my work and keeping it. I'd kind of I was like a gun for hire. I'd go do it, get it to the people, and then never have it again. So I, started looking for colleges, and my mom actually suggested Augusta State University. I don't even know how it came up, but we went down there, went to the orientation, and sat in there. They had a pretty cool film program. And so what I was like, oh, well, I want to do this. And so I ended up, enrolling and getting in, and I came in as a non-traditional student. I was probably 26 years old or something. Probably 26 years old, or 28. And then we came into school, and I was, communications degree. So, it's not journalism that I'm doing. I'm majoring in television and television production. So, yeah. So, I did that. And at the time, my thought was I'm going to platform off of this and go into, I'm going to go back to Atlanta. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be working on all the movie sets, and that's what I'm going to be doing. So towards the end of college, again, looking for money, I randomly ended up getting a temp job. One of my friends was supposed to do something for WJBF. He was supposed to go film football for them, and he was unable to do it, and he suggested me, and so they're like, oh, well, you have to go through this temp agency and get in there and do it that way. So I did. I went to the temp agency, Augusta Staffing, toot toot. That's a plug. Went and they sent me to WJBF, and I did football with them for the summer, and I fell in love with the live production aspect of it. I fell in love with it so much that I asked them if they had any work, which they did not the first year. Sat there, freelanced for another year. Comes around the next summer, I'm back in there again. I'm like, hey, and then I'm really like this year, like I'm like, I'm networking, and I'm like, yeah, you guys got to get me in there. And Scott Elledge, who's a big wig over there, he was like, well, do you want to come on and work at the news station and work part time? And so I was like, yeah, and so I jumped over to there. I stopped freelancing. I was actually working two jobs. I was working there, and I was working at Beasley Broadcasting at the same time, directing and driving vans over there. But that's how I initially got into news. Again, not expected. I just fell in love with it from there. You could ask anybody there. I worked just about every job in the station. From I started as an editor to a director, pushing the buttons and pulling people up, to the photographer. And now we're at 8 years at WJBF, like coming up, I think in September. And at some point, now I'm their digital reporter, which that's its own story in itself. That was crazy how all that happened, because I was pretty much fine with being a photog forever. I loved it. I loved going out, filming stuff. And we were supposed to go to Six Flags. It was supposed to be me and two other guys. And they're like, Brandon, go down there. They're debuting a ride, film the guys doing stuff, and, that's what you'll do. So we were the day of one of the guys who was supposed to go, he feels sick and he can't go, so it's just me and one other guy, and we go down there. So we go down there and we get in there, and Six Flags, like they're throwing out all this stuff. They're like, oh, we need you to say this and say that, and and it's then they asked me to get on the ride, because they were like, there's two spots, and they had all this stuff set up, so they really didn't even need me there to like film anything. They had GoPros, drones, so they were like, if you want to get on the ride and just get on there, that'd be great. So so we get on the ride, and the ride starts up, and the guy that I'm with, like, he's kind of forgetting what they're supposed to say. And me being, improv. Right. I just start saying stuff like, we're out here. It's the biggest ride in the Southeast, blah, 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 blah. Just rattling off stuff. And, I got done with it, and the Six Flags guys, they were booming about it that day. They were like, oh, you did great, man. And then, we drove back all the way back to Augusta, and that day, my boss pulls me into his office, and he's like, Brandon, we got to talk about what you're doing here. And and that the rest is history. It was like a TV show. It was honestly like a whirlwind thing, where I was like, oh, I guess I'm just on cam talent now. Yeah,
hey, right place, right time. I mean, and the skill to do it and do it well too. So I mean, that's amazing. Yeah, it's so cool when stuff like that happens. And like I said, you were prepared. You were there. You talk about your improv background. Have you always been like into theater, into improv, acting, that kind of stuff as well?
100%. I was a big big theater nerd growing up. God, I think my first play I was Abraham Lincoln. So I was always always willing to go big, always willing to go get outside the box.
Yeah.
I did theater all throughout high school, pretty much like forever. And I took a break for a little bit in college, but then I met the folks at Lachat and got into improv and had. Man, what a 7-year run I had. And I'm on a break right now, but it was the 7 years, man. Like Lachat, honestly, Lachat's another one of the reasons why I have this job too. Because even though my boss pulled me into, and was like, "Oh, we need to change what you're doing," and there was like one other person that we had there, when it kind of got brought up, they were like, "Well, I haven't really I was just." The camera guy who was kind of funny in the station,
right.
So they weren't really sure,
Yeah, because that's a hard barrier to cross from production to on air in a television station or anything like that, because it's very segregated and like no, you push buttons and you know how the camera equipment works, and then we have these other pretty people that we put in front of the camera.
Yeah. So she came. She came to one of my shows one night, and I told her to come. I was like, "Hey, come and see what I do." And I was on fire that night. I was zinging them. I had the crowd going, and I got done with the show, got off stage, and she was like, "All right, I get it." And so then she was behind it too.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so so I always say Le Chat Noir. For me, I definitely, they came to me in a time when I definitely, needed them. I was here in college, I didn't really know anybody here in Augusta yet.
Yeah.
And that's where, most of the people that I'm attached to now, that's pretty much where they came from. I'd say some of the best people I know are from that group. And I literally, in my mind, one of the best places in Augusta. I love those folks.
That's amazing. And so you're taking a break. How long are you taking a break from, or are you just until you're ready to go back?
Until it hits. It kind of started at the pandemic. Obviously, I think that's when all breaks kind of happen. And it's like not even like anything in particular. Like people kind of always ask me like, "Oh, when are you coming back?" And I honestly just I tell people I'm kind of like in like this like prime at my work right now. Like I'm working like a lot, and like not even like to where it's like, oh, like they're like making you do a bunch of stuff. Like I'm doing like a lot of stuff like that I do, just for me, like setting up like, oh, I'm gonna do this and drive out here and do this cool story with somebody out in McCormick or whatever. And it's just been one of those things to where like, I've been working a lot, and then when I get home, like it's like, oh, I want to sleep. And then when you do something for a long time, I think breaks are good.
Oh, absolutely.
In general, I think so. Because it makes you appreciate something. And I did improv for 7 years straight. I ran it at one point. I was the director. They're killing the game right now. They're still selling out, still having hilarious shows. So it's kind of cool to see it grow and do its thing. And then one day when I'm sitting around, and this thing, the itch always comes back to you. Like anybody, like you'll sit there, you'll see something, you'll watch something, and something happens, and then all of a sudden you're just like, I got to get back out there on stage. It's every guy that I talk to who's been in improv, like they always do the same thing, and I feel like that pops up on me eventually. But right now, I've just been really cool with just really, putting in time at work, telling really cool stories, and, just really, just getting out there for the community lately.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is there anything that's like got you super salivating that you're working on that's coming down the pipe that we can be on the lookout for?
Ooh, let's see. I mean, so the one thing that I'm pretty excited about that I'm working on, and I kind of teased it a little bit recently, is that I'm about to start working on it's going to be a hidden gems kind of like it's going to be an article, and it's probably going to be a segment too that we end up airing. And so what I've been doing, I just did a list recently, where I reached out to everybody and I was like, tell me about some of the hidden gems in the Augusta area that you think that there are, and that'd be whether it's people, businesses, a restaurant, and so everybody throws stuff out there. Knuckle sandwiches. Person would be Scott Russell, who I know personally, and he's another guy who does like amazing things for the community. And so, granted, we just did a list for it, but what I want to start doing, and what I am about to start doing, I say want to. I'm literally like next week. I'm going to start, going to these places and kind of doing like little mini segments with them, and then doing like an overall story, and maybe cover like 5 or 6 places at a time, so you can really like, because it's one thing to see the list, but I think like when people get to see it, like if you go somewhere and you're like the main thing that I'm going to do, especially for restaurants, and if anybody's ever traveled with me knows this, I do this all the time. If I go into somewhere, before I leave, I'll say, what's the one thing I have to have before I go here, and I do that anywhere I go. If I go into a restaurant for the first time, I want to know what it is I have to have before I leave here.
That's awesome. I do the same thing, especially if I'm traveling out of town, and I say, look, if I never step foot in this restaurant ever again, what's the one thing I need to have had? And it sucks when they're like, oh, I don't really eat here, or I just started, or I'm like, well, then ask someone in the back. I don't want to miss the thing that, in 2 years, people are like, man, they've got the best blah there. And it's like, I went there and I had the egg sandwich. I was like, why didn't I get the other thing?
Exactly. So that's what I'm trying to bring to the table, like with this article. See, I'm going to be popping into restaurants, talking to people. And again, with the effort for all of this, it's just to get more, get more people's like their name out there. I generally love, like, one of the best parts of my job is like when I do something, or I do like a segment on somebody, and they call me back like a week later and they're like, oh man, like we've been getting blown up and we've had all these people show up to this and blah blah blah, and thank you so much. So that's always a really good feeling to help someone out, and they go from like kind of being like in okay traffic in their business to now they're like, wow, we had the best Saturday that we ever had, and now more people are talking about us. It doesn't get any better than that.
That's awesome. Aside from the work, which it sounds like you are definitely pouring yourself into, what else is bringing you joy right now?
Bringing me joy, I get a lot of joy from just relaxing, man. Yeah. Like I'm a big person, and I think that a lot of people, if you're not taking time to, either, be with yourself or be with your family, like, I suggest doing it. It's I mean, like today, there's nothing better for me to wake up, super early on a Saturday, get up, the dogs are there, and just sit around, watch a movie, play a video game, just not really worry about the world. We all get very caught up in, the hustle and bustle of stuff, and I'm very like, that's like, I love that kind of stuff. Or just, I got a bunch of joy recently just from going to a soul bar and catching a band that that I had never heard of before, and they just tore the house down. I'm wearing the shirt right now. Annie Dukes. Nice. And it was that kind of stuff. So I get joy from just having experiences, especially when you work a lot, it's those times where you get to kind of just step away and just kind of like, and just relax and do your thing. That kind of stuff is what I'm all about.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's always, I think it's always important, especially if you, like you said, you're working. It's like, well, what are you working for if you don't take that time away for yourself to, do the things you enjoy, play your video games, play with the dogs or whatever it is, hang out with your loved ones, try new restaurants or whatever. And that's the thing for me. It's like, and for you, that'd be like research. It's like, I can write this up. No, but to, try different experiences and to actually like, put yourself as far away as you can from whatever your work is, and just be and exist. And I think that's amazing. Yeah. That's amazing stuff. You talked about playing video games. Are you a console? Are you a PC? Are you a...
I am a huge huge console player. I have all 3 of the major systems right now. You know,
Yeah.
like so there's no hate. The Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, you know, Nintendo, whatever you got. And then, you know, I got some of the older stuff. You know, I got, you know, I'll go my old PlayStation, Super Nintendo. I am a huge gamer. My dad started that on me when I was 5. My mom said that won't last. She has eaten her words, and I have proven to her that it is here to stay. I just love them. It's like they're almost like books for me, which is actually interesting because, you know, I wasn't big. I had issues reading when I was younger. You know, I was in, you know, the learning classes. You know, I was separated from all the other kids. You know, it was like me and like 4 other kids, and because we were having trouble reading. And I just had all this trouble reading books. My mom then one day, like, I'm trying to remember which one it was, but she got a game. It was an RPG, and it had like a lot of reading into it. And my mom, she said to my dad, she was like, "Look, Brandon will not read these books, but he will sure enough read this video game." And like I think like that. She actually will say, like, you know, man, like video games actually helped him with reading a lot because when he wouldn't read a book, he would definitely get in there and read Final Fantasy, whatever one we were on right now. So, or Legend of Zelda, that was a big reading one, you know, when it came out on 64. So yeah, video games are deep into my DNA, a big part of what I do.
Yeah. And are you more of an RPG type player, or sports, or you play it everywhere?
I'm literally like it disgusts some of my friends because a lot of people will they get a game. They will sit down, they will play that game, they will get done with it, and then they're like, not me. I jump around a lot. I've been playing certain games for years. Like, I'll like pop in. I have a really weird memory. So like I can jump into a game from like 4 years ago that I haven't played and like jump in there, remember everything that's happening in the story, remember all the controls, and then just like keep going. Sometimes, yes, I will get something that, like I think I'm playing a game called The Quarry right now, which I'm very into. I will finish it. But sometimes, I jump around a lot. So, I play sports games. I play RPGs. I play, on Sundays, generally when I wake up, like I assure you, when I wake up tomorrow morning, I will be looking for a generally like cartoony type stuff like a Banjo-Kazooie or Super Mario. Nice. It takes me back to a time in my childhood where when I do that, I'll just want to play something that's like, very, cartoonish and not, like guns or whatever, which I do play those games too, but it's a certain vibe I want on Sunday.
That's good. I love that. Yeah, man, Banjo-Kazooie, I remember that. That was a great game.
Oh yeah, man, those are classics.
Do you do a lot of like and this is how little of a gamer I am, because I have no systems, but like my boys had systems and they were always on. Do you do any like that multi-person internet based where you've got kind of playing someone across the other?
I do, yes and no. So I do play with people. It's mostly people I know.
Gotcha.
Like, we'll start like a party or whatever, but if they will all tell you that like there's types of gamers to where, like I'll say like, with like Call of Duty or whatever, which actually I don't play that too much. But, they'll jump into a game and they'll just talk to whoever is on there. It could be anybody from around the world.
Right.
I no longer have the patience for that.
Oh, wow.
And that is because, one, unfortunately, there's a lot of rude people in the world, a lot of, and again, I'd much rather just be talking to people I know, and like, I know I'm not trying to get in there and have 5-year-olds yell at me and call me names. So, like some people like that. Some people love getting in there and like, the interaction. When that's your thing, that's fine. And there have been a couple times where I, back in the day where I would jump into something and I was like, oh, these are actually some pretty cool people. And, we'd friend each other and all that. But like kind of over time, like I kind of just, especially now, like, when I go and I'm playing video games, I'm trying to relax. So I'm not trying to jump into a game of something and then have somebody be like, "You're the worst player that I've ever seen in my life."
Get stressed out.
Yeah,
by that,
I'm not trying to deal with all that. So, yeah, so yes to one, but no with like the masses.
Yeah. Which is funny, seeing as what you do is you go and talk to the masses that you don't know.
Exactly. So it's
maybe that's it. Maybe it's like, no, this is too much like work.
Exactly. Like I'm like, I have to deal with talking to random people all the time. I'm not trying to do it right now while I'm off work.
All right, Brandon, this is the second segment of the show where we dive a little bit deeper into you and talk a little bit more about mental health. I think it's very important to bring this subject to light because there are a lot of people out there that feel they're alone in these things. But I think everybody goes through down days. Everybody has those days they just want to, just let the hot water hit them in the shower because they just don't feel like getting out. But I think it's important that we destigmatize that by having the conversations. Mm-hmm. And I want to know, for you, how do you keep the darkness at bay?
All right. So for me, I think in order to really get like where I come from, so I'm a big product of bullying. I got picked on a lot when I was a kid. I mean, a lot. It was brutal. I was a kid from Syracuse. Came down here, thick accent. A little bit different, a little weird. So I got picked on a lot. And I think, dealing with that, I definitely tried to appease a lot of people. That was like my defense mechanism, was being funny or trying to make sure everybody, liked me. And that actually was what caused a lot of my stress. And I think a lot of people do that, especially, with our jobs. Our main thing is, you want people to be happy with you, to, think that you're doing a good job or doing whatever. And I think, going back to what we were talking about earlier, for me, a big thing about what helps me mentally, I tell people this all the time, is take your breaks.
Yeah.
Like, take your breaks, take your paid time off, take your sick leave. Even I'm a big person to where if you're taking a sick leave and you just need a day to yourself, like I think that's 100%, because mental health is super important. Some days you just cannot people is what my dad would say. And when it comes time, take a week off. I do it a lot. Like, again, I get up on Saturdays and I really just sit there and I just take time myself. I don't mess with my phone. I think that's a big thing too. Like, put your phone away. We're really connected all the time, and sometimes like being especially like really deep into social media, like you do weird stuff in there. You start comparing yourself to other people. You see something that may upset you, especially with all the crazy stuff that's going on in the world. So sometimes it's good to like just put all that away and just be like, let's go to another world. Sit down, watch a movie. I love spending time with my wife. She's fantastic. She is a big part of what keeps me nice, calm, and cool. Just sitting down with her some days and just picking a show and just be like, this is what we're doing today. We're gonna get some pizza and yeah. So I would say that. And another thing too that I really had to get better about was just talking to people about what's on my mind.
Yeah.
I was really bad growing up about not really talking to people about stuff. It would almost seem like that I wasn't upset about anything. I was big because I didn't want to disappoint people. That was so. Now, if I have something going on, I'll talk to my wife. I call my mom all the time. And I'll just sit there and be like, hey, and it's like I have to like talk out like what's going on in my head.
Yeah.
And I'll just sit there and normally we'll get to that point because sometimes you'll just be upset and you don't know why, and it's hard, but if you're able to acknowledge sometimes that you're like, I'm in a mood, like sometimes talking to somebody and being able to figure out what the core of this is, like that can really, really help out in my mind. For me, it's talking to my wife, it's talking to my mom. I got a couple of mentors, if, in regards to work stuff, if that ever gets me. And that's talking is a lot because trying to figure it out all in your head can be a lot sometimes, and your brain's gonna it's gonna do whatever it wants, and hearing other people's perspective, it helps a lot.
Yeah, Yeah. And I got to imagine, and you working in the news industry, that's your job, is to be in, I hate to say all the bad, because it's not all bad, but it's, when you're watching the news, it's about 95% bad stuff. Luckily for you, you're in that 5% of good stuff for the majority of what you're putting out, as far as like your stories, your articles and things like that. But I mean, you're still there, you're in it, and you're aware of it. And that's got to be tiring, just to kind of live in that.
Well, and even still with, even though I do primarily, good, positive, people, obviously when stuff happens and it goes down, you got to get out there, you still see that stuff, which that's always like a thing in itself. Like, you can't really prepare anybody to, show up on the scene of a fire and, a family has lost everything or somebody, and you're just there to cover it. I worked, the morning show for 5 years. So, I was traffic accidents, fires, shootings, all the stuff that happens in the morning, that kind of stuff. Again, like, people don't a lot of times people get to like only just worry about like, the stuff that's happening, that you see, the big things that are happening on like social media or in the news, they'll worry about that. When you got to get out there and you got to see all this stuff that's literally just happening in your neck of the woods, and I don't even think people realize it's happening sometimes. You see a glance at it on Facebook, like, oh, shooting, but then when you're there and like you got to see it, and you see the crying, like it's definitely something that weighs on you. And I love my job. Everything that I've done, it's made me, I think it's made me a stronger person. But yeah, it's definitely, you have to talk to people about like that kind of stuff. And I mean, again, like, even if something's bothering you, like sometimes, I don't know, I think that, even if you're stressed about something, that's just going on in the world, you're like, oh, I'm seeing this a lot, and, I'm like nervous about it. Go talk to somebody about it. Someone may be able to like kind of help you through, like, well, hey, here's what's going on right now. Maybe you don't need to be as stressed about it, or, and realize that, that maybe you shouldn't be as stressed about it. So communicating, is my thing. Like, I'm a big, like, I obviously I talk a lot. Communication is a big thing for me. And I think like figuring out the balance of, not only, just talking to people and trying to, lift them up with doing what I'm doing, but learning to talk about things for myself and being able to, kind of open up about those kind of things, that really is what kind of changed me over the years. Again, back in the day, I was like a powder keg. Like, I would just sit there and just, everything was all about everybody else. And I had to make sure everybody was happy, be the funny guy. And then over time, it just was, I was able to have so many better relationships, because it was like people like, oh, it's like I actually get to talk to you now, not like the Brandon representative. So yeah, being able to understand the difference between your representative, which again, we do that all the time.
Yeah.
Go out to an event, you're meeting people, you're putting on the charm, that's you, but it's like an amped up version of you.
Right.
Being able to bring out the at home you into public more, and being able to talk to people about it, like that, I think will take a load of stress off of anybody, just, being able to talk to someone about your views or about how you feel about stuff, and not feeling like you're switching it up for each thing, that's what it's all about to me.
Yeah. And I mean, because that's dangerous if you're in that people pleaser mode and you're changing your viewpoint for whichever group that you're in. You could lose yourself in that, and then now you've got these two different versions of you out there that two different groups think of you at, and if they come at you at the same time, it's like
worlds collide.
What do I do?
That was high school for me, and I got over that much later in life, and now basically like it's like when I walk up to people, like pretty much every person now, it's like I'm slamming the Brandon Dawson book on the table and just opening it wide up, and I'm like, this is it.
Yeah.
You either love it or you hate it, but
But this is it.
This is it. Yeah. So,
but that's also very freeing, though, too.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and like you said, it allows you to not be stressed and not feel all this other anxiety. Because just again, which mask do I put on? It's like, no, I'm gonna take them off, and this is me, and you're just gonna get me.
Yeah.
You mentioned something earlier about mentors, and I think, especially in what you do, it goes for other people too in certain jobs and things like that, to be able to speak to people that are in that same environment, because their perspective is going to be very similar to yours, having been in it. That other people that you try to talk about, when you go home, and you have the advantage that Dixie also works in media as well. So yes, she can understand when you go talk your work stuff. Sometimes you go home and if your spouse doesn't work in the same field and you're trying to have, oh man, I had this thing, and they're like, why are you upset about that? That doesn't sound like there's a big thing. It's like, no, you don't understand. And it's like, so I think that's really smart and important to have mentors, even in your own field, that you can be open with about the things, because again, they're going to have that same type of perspective on what's been going on.
Yeah, I agree. It's always good to have someone that, again, like, in pretty much every part of my life, I have someone that I can talk to where I'm like, okay, like if you won't get this, I can go talk to one other person that'll do this. I have them at work, I have them at home, I have family members, and all of us have over the years kind of grown and like really figured each other out, and I'm really blessed for that reason alone. Like, man, my sisters and I, like, we are a bunch of weirdos, but like when I say that we all get each other like completely, it's wild. I can call them up and talk to them about anything, even if it's just something silly like, man, this person, I don't think this person likes me at work, and I don't know why. And they're like, oh, well, maybe you don't worry about that. And
right,
everybody looks at people differently. Look, just like don't be around them, and you'll be good. Yeah, they're a bunch of sweeties. They're a big part of my support system too.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And for you, then, do you find that being able to also pour out into your work, into your stories, because you are concentrating on positivity and the good side of news, do you think that helps you as well to have an outlet to really refresh your mind in those down times?
It has. And again, I can't tell you enough about how much it's such a good feeling. It's like almost like I work in two different worlds in the news, because you have some reporters to where it's their job to go out there and talk about the wild stuff that's going on, and while they're doing that, here I am at the place where a veteran has done something awesome and has raised a bunch of money for a bunch of kids, that for me, it's like you get to go around it helps a lot of people, even in my house, because me and my wife, we'll go to work and something terrible happened in the world, and like during that day, like while that stuff is happening, she's like real worn out from it, because you get real worn out from having to see stuff all day. But then she'll get to come home, and I'll be like, oh, I just talked, with this artist, his autistic artist, and he's made the entire cast of Sister Act out of pipe cleaners, and he's super stoked about it, and that's just my story for the day. And this person I'm talking about, his name is he's a great kid, and he made my day that day. I'm trying to remember. It's sad to say this, like I can't remember which crazy world event was happening that day.
Wow.
But that particular day, that I remember that he really made me feel, just like, there are good people and, good things happening in the world. And it's almost like my job. I get like a constant reminder of that, just from talking to people, just, going out there and it being like, oh, well, I did a story on the busy bakers, they just these kids out there with special needs, but they're out there, baking up a storm, and, their stuff tastes great and people love them out there. So, you get to do all this stuff. It's just cool, man. Like I honestly say that it gave me like, it revitalized me in television, because I just really got to go out there and just start talking to like really cool people, and I was getting a little, I want to say burnt out, but it was like working the morning shift for a couple of years, it gets to you, and doing a complete switch around. You know, it didn't hit me until like maybe a couple years into where I was just like, man, like I got a really good gig doing what I'm doing right now. So yeah.
All right, Brandon, this is the third segment of the show. It's time now for the Fast Five. The Fast Five. It's time now for the Fast Five. Fast Five. Sorry,
Fast Five is also one of my favorites in the Fast and the Furious franchise, but you know we'll talk about that another time.
The Fast Five is powered by Poddex. It's an app created by my friend Travis Brown. It's created for podcasters, great interview questions, but there's also physical decks, and they're great icebreakers. So maybe if you need to, you know, and probably would be great, I would think, improv prompts too. Uh-oh. So if you ever get back into improv, there might be some good prompts in the Poddex.
I want to get that out there right now that I will be back. Nobody has to worry.
It'll be back. But if you go to chewinthefatbr.com/poddex and use the promo code CHEW, you can get 10% off your physical decks. But I am going to use the app. Again, no wrong answers. First thing comes off the top of your head. You ready for this?
I am.
All right. And question number 1. If you could go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Ooh, one piece of advice to my younger self, just one. Oh man, I would go back in time and tell him to not stress about these girls so much. Oh, I was so broke up on so many different girls growing up, and I'm talking epic. Like just tears. If I could just like go back to him and just be like, hey man, like, you know, it's gonna be okay. Like you're gonna chill. Do you like just like relax. Maybe don't be so extra about it. You know, you'll save yourself a lot of time. Like I hope people understand. I'm talking. This is like high school, maybe middle school, and I'm talking like just sitting around in the darkness, just like, oh god, I can't believe that so and so and I aren't going to prom anymore. And my mom's like, Brandon, what are you doing? Get out! Get out of the house! Go do something. A lot of wasted time there.
Well, that's good. That sounds like very solid sage advice to be giving somebody, though. So that's great. I would have to say very much for myself. Like if I could go back and tell Lil Rob, you know, I would tell him to be himself sooner. You know. Because there was a lot of that mask wearing, a lot of that people pleasing that I tried to do as a defense mechanism. And if I just realized that in the end of the day, those people I was trying to please aren't really going to matter, and I just really need to do stuff for me and just be myself.
Oh man, can I go back and take back what
I said?
No,
your answer was great. Your answer was great.
Yeah,
your answer was great. That's awesome.
I do agree with you though. That's very important.
Yeah. Question number 2. How many chickens would it take to kill an elephant?
67.
Okay. I'm going to leave it as that. Question number 3. Is there any local dish or food product from where you grew up that you miss?
Yep. So growing up in Syracuse, we had this bagel shop, and I tell people this all the time, and they think that I'm a lunatic about it. But growing up, a big thing where I was getting a tuna bagel, like a grilled tuna patty melt bagel, like in the mornings. Like I'm talking like this is like a breakfast diet. I'm talking me and my mom would go. And we'd go, I did a martial arts. I was doing a Kempo, and we'd do our karate class in the morning. And then as soon as we got done, like it was like, all right, we go to the bagel shop. I would get this bagel melt. It was the bagels, the tuna was grilled, and it had, the melted cheese and the tomato. Oh, it was to die for. And now down here, I mentioned it to people, and they're like, "What are you talking about?"
Well, you keep saying grilled tuna. I'm feeling like this was a tuna fillet or something. Because the only tuna I think of at a place is like tuna salad. You know what I mean? Where it's like all the mayo and all that stuff.
I mean,
on it.
That's what it is. Like if you've ever had if you've ever just had like like a tuna melt.
Yeah.
Like that's like literally just what it was, but it was just a bagel.
But it was on a bagel.
It was on a bagel. Yeah, and we had that was our thing. I loved it.
That's awesome.
I loved it.
That's awesome. All right, question number 4. If you could learn any language fluently, what would it be?
Japanese.
Really?
Hands down. Love it there.
Yeah?
Yep.
Have you been?
Yep, would move.
Really?
If given the opportunity, I'd go there immediately.
Wow.
I love it there.
What was it about it? Just
the vibe. It's everybody is so granted it's super crowded, but everybody there is so respectful and so chill that like it's just everything that I want. Like, I mean, there wasn't a person there that like, and even if you didn't know like they didn't know a lick of English, you didn't know a lick of Japanese, you could go up there and they would help you out with something. Probably one of my favorite moments while we were in Japan is we were sitting there and I was looking for these pajamas, and these 3 ladies in this store had a field day with me. I didn't know what they were saying, they didn't know what I was saying, but they knew what I wanted. They like took me to the back, they were handing me over these different pajamas, and I was coming out and doing a fashion show where it was hilarious. Like, and like, I finally came out and I was like, this is the one. And they were like, yes. Like, and then like, they were just so stoked, and like, it was just a great vibe. One of the best times that I've ever had. And that was like that story right there. That was pretty much everywhere. I could tell a million stories from that trip that were just like that. And everybody was just so cool. And I love Japan.
That's awesome. Sounds like you need to get on some Duolingo with some Japanese or something like that.
Happen.
That's awesome. All right, question number 5. What's the last thing you've done that you were really proud of?
Let me think about that. The last thing that I've done that I'm really proud of, taking care of my little dog recently.
Yeah?
He was really sick. And I had a really busy work week. and he was super sick, and I know this may be like a weird thing to be proud of, but like, I had to, take him to the vet and, get all of his stuff taken care of. I feel like my wife had a lot of stuff to do too. So it was like primarily me who was having to take care of this dog, and, it was rough for him. And, he had this dentist visit and we weren't sure what was happening.
Oh, wow.
Like, he had this weird reaction to it. So, I got through that entire week of work. And when I say I did not sleep because, he had a real bad case of diarrhea. So he was getting up every 2 hours in the night, and I was getting up, and I was just like, I was like, man, this is going to be, if I can get through this week. That's right. Because we had this huge segment planned for that week. It was your hometown in, I think, Waynesboro. And we got through the whole thing, and, segments went great. I had like 3 stories to do for it that week. That all went great. And then he ended up just coming out like $1 million. And I took care of him the whole time. So I was super proud just to be able to get through all that, not have any like super meltdowns. My wife was great all week, and that was like a real I remember just at the end of that week when it hit the weekend, I was just like, man, what a week. I'm so happy that we made it through it.
Yeah. That's like some alpha level adulting right there.
Yeah. When you can do like a bunch of stuff and like, still do your job and still have like something that like my dogs are like my kids too. I was, taking the lunch break, going home, checking on him. It was a crazy week. Oh man,
that's awesome that you made it through that though. That's really cool. What kind of dogs you have?
I have 2 dogs. I have one dog who is he's a tiny Chihuahua Min Pin mix by the name of Milo. He's our older dog. He is 8 years old, and we have a 60-pound Australian Hound mix.
Oh wow!
She's she's a beast, but she's just a big goof, and she's like 3. Those are my babies.
What's the Australian hound's name?
Ripley, named after Ellen Ripley from Aliens.
Nice. Well, that's awesome. We'll send Milo and Ripley my love, and that is our Fast Five. That's the show, Brandon. Thank you so much, man.
That was awesome. I could do like 6 more questions.
Dan, that was
6 specifically.
That was so good. I really appreciate you coming in. If folks want to keep up with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
If anybody wants to follow me, they can follow me on Facebook at either my personal one, Brandon Dawson, always love having more friends, or they can go to my work page, Brandon Dawson WJBF, or if you want more silliness, kind of a combination of news and video game talk, you can follow me on Twitter at BDawsonWJBF. I'm also on Instagram as well as Duck Dollars, but I am barely on there, so you'll be treated to whenever I decide to post 1 or 2 pics every 6 months.
That's awesome, though. I definitely will put those links in the show notes. And, of course, you can find out more about Brandon and our past guests on the guest page at chewingthefatbr.com. One more time, Brandon, thank you so much for being here, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This was actually very therapeutic.
Yeah, awesome. I'm glad you got something out of it, and I hope you got something out of it as well. And if you would like to support this podcast, I would appreciate it if you buy me a coffee at chewingthefatbr.com. But until next time, I look forward to when we have a moment to sit a spell and chew the fat.